done ASAP and get it in a marketable position. But I'll open that up for board comments and questions.
Well, obviously, if we privatize the runway in the surrounding area, it'll be up to the purchasers to do the CEQAs and all that stuff. And that won't fall on our ears as long as we cover ourselves in our sales agreement. So I can't see where any of that kind of stuff is gonna inhibit us from doing this quick claim. And I think we should rush through this as quick as possible.
Okay, and part of the error is they just simply left out a page of the
Page three.
Page three. The other part is some errors that Malcolm has discovered, and I guess I would recommend that we correct it all at the same time.
Absolutely.
If we're do that.
And then in terms of, whatever kind of documents that are out there, CCNRs, whatever that is, if we're doing any kind of disposal in the future, we'll do a title report, and those will present themselves hopefully. And if there's other ones out there that aren't part of the title search, I guess they'll present themselves at some point too, but hopefully there aren't.
What's it gonna take to get good, accurate maps of what's actually owned out there?
Well, Stantec, who is notorious for the maps that were used for their Harlong disposal, has a series of maps out there, and that's a question really I think the surveyor could answer better than I. But I think that those are probably the most recent and up-to-date maps. We've found errors with those as we do with any record of surveys, but those would probably be the most likely way of disposing of those properties.
Yes, and there's also been some corrected quitclaim deeds. Excuse me, gentlemen, Malcolm McDonald, County Surveyor. On the Stantec maps, they showed several parcels, but then we've had some remainder parcels have been included in some other quitclaim deeds. So referring to the recorded documents and to that map would be the best way to probably justify the parcel description.
So what Malcolm is saying, when the Army originally deeded it, they made mistakes, and we came back and corrected those. And we came back and corrected more. And now we're going to correct some additional.
So Richard, that map that with the orange on it, the Orange County properties is accurate? No? Yes?
The map that I gave you highlighted in orange is an assessor's parcel map.
Right.
So, which doesn't describe points on the ground.
Right.
It's just simply for assessment purposes.
It's just lines.
Purposes. Right, it's just
Yeah.
lines on a piece of paper.
Right.
The Stantec maps, which I have not reviewed, I believe would show monuments on the ground. Is that?
Yes. Again, these, the county took, or the LRA took that, possession of that property from those Stantec maps.
So do we have those available?
Yes,
Could I get one today?
sure.
Could it be shared with the rest of the board too?
Yeah.
It would be a
Absolutely.
series.
Everybody needs to see
Yeah, I mean,
It would be a series of maps.
I mean, this to me is, for the most part, pretty meaningless because other than this one map here in the back, and Aaron had to find it and show it to me. It's like I have absolutely no clue what you're even talking about, so.
If it's like the rest of the Stantec maps, it's not gonna be on one page. It's gonna be.
There's 10 pages.
multiple.
10 pages probably.
So just so you know,
That's
you have to piece it together.
Hey, it's a map, I don't care how many pages, as long as it shows me what we're talking
So we
about.
know what we're talking
And
about.
in addition to that, so the county took title of the property through those maps, but subsequent to that, the county leased for a 50-year term with an additional 50-year extension,
Right.
a portion back to the Army because of another error. And that's
Is
would
that,
not be
is
continued.
that their gymnasium that they gave us?
No.
No, this is all.
This is not on the runway.
They didn't deed enough of the runway portion is what I recall.
Runway, part of the runway ended up being on
On
county
county
property.
property, 2,000 feet of it.
Why did we give it back to them?
I don't know.
Back then, we were playing by the rules.
You tell me.
Well, I can tell you,
Didn't we give that
it's
2,000
it's
feet back?
because they're giving it, tells
Lease
us
agreement.
everything.
So they have a lease agreement for that 2,000 feet that they built onto our
For
property.
50 years and then another option for another additional 50 years. And that was, I think, circa 2006, I want to say.
Yeah, the lease agreement's not in your packet, but I think I have it here.
And so as we,
I have a copy
just
of
as
that.
another side note,
I
as we
would
go
like to
through
get
this
all that
process,
stuff.
we're going to develop,
Okay.
any information that's pertinent to this will be put before you, I think, in either pass around file or binders for the board. So
It's
that.
getting complicated and convoluted enough. Binders for the board might be a good idea.
Yes, so that you can have as much information as possible, and for Susan, of course.
Aaron had a question.
I have two things. The first thing is, what's the consequences if we don't do anything on this much infrastructure mistake?
The consequences of not doing what part?
The quick claim.
Quickly.
Don't know. You know, they, like I said, they seem to have reported these CCNRs, which don't include the county as a party to them, so I'm not sure what that means. It's the state and the Army, it appears like. Are those binding? I don't know. I thought that would be a good question for our land use attorney.
But I think the pertinent issue is what does it do to the marketability of the property if the
Right.
board desires to dispose of it? And frankly, I'm not sure that it impacts that.
And remember too, there's a MOU between the county and the Army, and I don't know that, you know, going into the future, 100 years, how significant the divorce will be, because we're always going to play a role out there.
Oh, sorry.
And then I guess kind of going to the second thing, I probably shouldn't say this, but we need to have a little sense of humor to the meeting as well, is, you know, this is the Army and their surveyors and their minions down below the chief of staff didn't do their job, so we gotta make a motion to impeach the president for not taking care of his minions and doing the right
That's
job.
second.
I abstain.
Mr. Chair, may I respond to Mr. Alba's first comment there? If we don't record this corrected quitclaim deed, page 3 is very important to this document because it's the second part of the easement and access rights that the grantor, in this case the Army, has to come in for a munitions response action. So if you understand what I mean, if there's some munitions are discovered out there that have not, you know, undetonated as such, then this gives them that right to come across and take care of that situation.
Into perpetuity.
Yeah,
I mean, they will do that anyway, but
yeah. This-
the interesting thing, and I don't want to get sidetracked, is who pays for what in that agreement. I looked back and found some minutes where Mr. Chapman was concerned about that in the future. I don't know that it was ever fully resolved, but it doesn't look like it's going to be the Army's or the state's paycheck. It's going to be ours.
And that was the concern I raised at the time.
I think the biggest consequence, look, you know, Aaron, when you asked what's the negative if we don't do it, it's just gonna, to me, I mean, if we wanna ever capture any revenue out there, we need to take care of this problem and move on and try.
So basically, this is gonna eliminate future liabilities every time.
It'll give us a more marketable piece of ground to try and market and bring some business partners into the county, but, you know, offer that land up for sale or lease or something. Supervisor Shelley?
Well, you know, why don't we just give it all back to the Army and let them sort it out? I mean, why are we trying to, I mean, my question is, this is now the third time we're being asked to do an amendment to, okay, and we, you know, the last time when we had the discussion, you know, they found the errors, supposedly we had fixed all the errors, and now we're back here doing it again, and we're gonna be back here in 3 months or 6 months or 2 years with more quitclaim deeds being fixed because we found some more stuff that we didn't know today, that we didn't know 6 months ago, back in March when this last thing was before us. And I mean, given all the no maps and given all the history, the cumulative history of errors being made, not just here but across the map, it makes it really hard to trust anybody. And I'm not saying I don't believe you, you know, but
I am the first one to tell you that it's convoluted.
I sense in your presentation, your tone, that at times you don't even believe yourself.
Well, I don't.
Yeah,
I certainly
you
don't.
know.
I certainly don't believe the Army
Yeah.
at this point, and I find it pretty remarkable that they don't have the funding to do this themselves. But
Yeah. Well, the
I
good,
digress.
the good thing is we have some very recent communication from the Army.
Oh, we have a great contact.
They clearly
Currently.
demonstrated, and they've basically given us the invitation to fix it and get it resolved, and I.
And who's that person?
Jennifer Olson.
This is Jennifer Olson, at the Army Corps of Engineers.
She's been great to work with. Malcolm's got a good relationship. I think they're both kind of scratching their heads at the last 10 years.
And I think we should seize on that opportunity. I think it's not often you get the great
Alignment.
relationship. And we get it right, you know, we hand over the information, and we get ourselves a marketable piece of property, and who knows, I mean, you know, we have something to do with. Right now, we have nothing.
So my direction is to proceed with the correction, and second part is, do you want staff to move forward with the RFP process, or?
Well, I think, like I said, let's talk about first things first. I'm of the opinion that we should fix that we should accept they've reached out to us and said, will you fix it? And I think we should say yes and do that as quickly as possible. That's my feeling on it. I don't see any negative to that, other than a bit of staff time, but we turned a useless piece of, you know, ground surrounding a runway into something that we could do something with. So, how does the board feel about that?
Well, how about if we go, and if we still do the same thing with Jim's idea, is give them all the property back. And that way they can go in, they can take out their runway, they can redraw their lines, put in their easements, and then give it back, and then we can sell it after that.
Well, I think if it was on the table to give property back, we would have addressed that earlier, just on some of the parcels in Hurlong, and I don't know what would make them inclined to do that. But if you want us to formally go down
They
some
can clean up their
road.
own errors that they've made in the past.
What about their munitions
I don't wanna do that.
that aren't on
They're not gonna do that.
these LRA, these former LRA properties? What about their munitions they found, those cluster bombs they found down by Labor Crossing here not too long ago that had everybody all fired up? So it sounds like they've got, you know, it's more than just a foot under this ground. They've got stuff scattered all over the landscape.
They
down
had,
there.
they had crews going through all that area.
Yeah, I mean, that's what
They-
that crazy
they've been
map
cleaned
is.
up.
When,
In fact, I sold them breakfast, lunch, and dinner there for about 8 months of them cleaning up that whole area out there.
and that's what these maps are showing. They did a
Yeah.
grid pattern to
Yeah,
look for
they-
ordinance.
those
It's
grids out
not
there.
meant to be like a map indicating the location, but what they did on that polygon. And, you know, that's
That's what
their
that's a
assertion,
map
they
of?
did as much as they could. Pardon me?
That's what that's a map of?
Mhm.
Okay.
So, what's the,
I'd say we proceed with the quick claim and finish that up and then market this piece of property. That's my motion.
so, okay, well, I didn't realize this was a motion item,
Well, I guess it is now.
but.
It is now.
Okay.
Still we have to have a public hearing.
No?
So, your motion, just restate your motion.
To proceed with the quick claim
And direct
Finish it.
staff to draft.
and finish it up, and then we put an RFP out to market that piece of property.
And who will be in charge of the RFP?
Why don't we, let's,
Let's go
Conduct that
one,
as a
let's
separate
jump
item.
one pond at a time.
Then I would
So,
recommend
the
maybe we
RFP.
modify that, just to, let's get the claim, or the deed
Okay.
fixed, then come back to the
And
board.
then we'll come back with the RFP.
And that's what you second.
so just restate the motion again.
To, go ahead,
Proceed with the quick claim.
proceed with the quick claim deed.
Correct.
I might, if you, the recommended action, I think,
Yeah,
might be
the recommended
appropriate.
action is
It
fine.
states, direct county surveyor's office to prepare the corrected quitclaim deed. And I don't know if you want to, I would recommend it come back to the board before we actually authorize execution, but
Right.
that's what that is.
Right.
Just number 3 then.
You need a resolution, you need a resolution to do that, and that's
Sure.
just a
Yes.
resolution in here. that
We'll
was-
need a resolution to accept the deed, I believe, which will have to be executed, because the quitclaim deed will have to actually be executed by the Army, and we will accept it.
We're just gonna be creating it for them.
Okay.
So,
For,
the motion is, just for number 3, or does it include to consider future disposal
I would say just number 3, and then discuss number 4.
as a separate item after? Okay, so we have a motion, on the floor, to, follow the actions outlined in number 3. Do we have a second? Second, Sue.
But I would say rather than, and authorize chairman to execute and to forward to the Department of Army once that draft has been.
We can include two in there?
I'm sorry.
You wouldn't include two in three?
Well, I don't think if there's any real action on number 2.
We did that.
You already did that.
Okay,
Which is-
so, we have a first and a second, and we're gonna have some discussion, and Supervisor Hold on.
So are we leaving off the last part of that sentence, authorize the chairman to execute?
Yeah,
We're
because
leaving that off.
That has to come back
that-
as a
yeah,
resolution.
it's erroneous. The Army will execute the quitclaim deed to us.
Okay, makes more sense.
And then we have to take an action by resolution to accept that, which would authorize the chairman or whoever to sign.
Correct.
But to include that in the motion now, without seeing any of that would be, I don't know if I was the chairman, I'd like
Yeah,
to.
why don't we just come back
So
to
we shortened it to direct the county surveyor's office to prepare the corrected quitclaim deed.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, we'll call for the vote.
Could you pull the vote, please?
Okay, let me figure out where you guys are. Supervisor Chapin?
No.
Supervisor Alba?
Yes.
Supervisor Pyle?
All right.
Supervisor Hammond?
Aye.
And Supervisor Wilson?
Aye.
Clear's mine. What could go wrong?
Okay,
Now,
I'd like to,
Make sure and include the courthouse in this
we
one.
will, let's discuss, then item 4.
okay.
Okay.
So, a couple of the board members have suggested over the last month or so that we consider disposing of the property that surrounds the Amity Airfield. And first let me make it clear, county doesn't own the runway. We own property surrounding the runway, part of which has been leased back to the Army for 100 years, give or take. There's approximately,
Okay.
One of these chairs or something else.
approximately,
Where's my wallet?
approximately 3,400 acres in total, some of which could be used as access to the property. There's a long stretch along the lakeshore out to the runway area that the county owns. It is restricted by a couple of documents, and maybe I'll ask Maury or I don't see Malcolm.
Malcolm went to get maps.
Okay. Oh, to get maps, okay. There's a couple of documents that restrict the use of that and that allow for the joint use of the airstrip in conjunction with the county and the Army agree on the joint use of that. There's been many rumors that, Federal Express or UPS or you name it, wants to locate out there to put some sort of distribution facility. As far as we've been able to tell, no one has ever had any contact with the county in that regard.
County staff.
Any county staff and any formal contact from any of those agencies. Not to say that they have been contacted or might be interested, but we haven't had that. So the suggestion has been made is that,
Can I put something in there?
sure,
Don't mean to interrupt, they have contacted the Army base,
who has?
FedEx and UPS.
Oh, okay.
So-
I'm unaware of it.
And UPS is the latest suitor.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, if we could get a contact, that would probably be beneficial, because they would be someone that I think we might want to contact regarding the request for proposals. So anyway, the suggestion has been that we put this property out to a request for proposals process in case there is someone like that who wants to locate there, who's got the wherewithal to put in the improvements that would be required to do some sort of commercial activity out in that area.
For those improvements, I think it's important, if I can interject, would not only be the improvement of the ground that they would acquire through this disposal of property but there would have to be significant improvements made, to the airstrip, not the landing part, but the communications part, to be able to have a tower and a communication and clearance. And so obviously, the Army, and that has always been at the basis of the discussion the Army had with the county, is long before FedEx or UPS and those came along, we had, I think it was Bob Sorbog and others, this is going back to mid-late 90s, possibly into the early 2000s, is that there was an interest of developing a, you know, to put it in comparison, like a car wash, but a plane wash, a facility that would be able to clean planes. I mean, not only on the outside, but then they would go through on the inside and basically detail them out. And the theory is that if you look at a map, you got Seattle up here and San Diego here, Denver here, and San Francisco here. And if you drew some lines, we were close to being in the center area of where that was, here kind of going east maybe. And most of the facilities that apparently do that for the major airlines on the West Coast are all located in urban settings, but they do the detailing from about 1 in the morning until about maybe 5 in the morning, because they're flying planes taking care of customers up until maybe 11, 12, maybe no later than 1, and they're also taking care of them starting about 5, 6 in the morning heading out. So the time frame for doing this work is kind of like a night job. And the problem is that when you bring these planes in to these urban settings where you got housing, the folks living there generally don't like, I mean, they expect that the airports will calm down. So the idea was, well, let's go find a place, and it would be the folks living out by Schaefer Field area would be the ones that would be listening to these planes coming in to be detailed out. Well, that was the proposal. But in order to be able to do something like that, I mean, at that time they still needed to extend the runway, which at that time was just being speculated. It's now long since been accomplished. But there were a lot of other improvements to be able to handle any sort of traffic. I mean, the Army uses it because they're the only ones using it. And so whatever sort of agreement required both entities, yeah, we go out and hustle and get somebody, we've got, here's the land, and you can build your building here and do your facility there. But in the meantime, you know, the Iraq War and then the Afghan War kind of took off, and the Army made it real clear that we're busy, we need this for what we're doing, the idea of having this shared relationship. So that pretty much put any of those kind of discussions on hold. And I know I've heard all kinds of speculation that there's these other entities, and I've even heard that, you know, it's been fed to me in many respects that the only reason why they're not here is because the county is against it. What's wrong with you people? Well, there's a lot more to it than the county. I mean, the county had indicated a willingness to pursue those kind of things, but they've always been speculative things. There's never been a proposal in here at the podium to the board, let's rock and roll and make something happen. And my attitude is, you know, that land that they gave us through the BRAC process was basically worthless, because even though they gave us this land, we don't have access to the asset you need to make the land functionally usable. I mean, it requires this agreement. So now maybe because the wars are winding down and maybe the Army has an interest to do that, but if that can be, that can be cracked and we can see the agreements, you know, between the Army and the county that we're going to now co-locate and utilize this. I mean, the county went to bat working with Feinstein's office, lobbying to try to get the money to extend that runway. It finally got extended, but we're still shut out. So we can give that land to anybody tomorrow, FedEx, UPS, whatever. They can't do anything with it until those other things are worked out with the Army. Now, maybe this gal in Sacramento, maybe she might be the backdoor avenue to maybe get some sort of an agreement signed. But I've been sitting here watching this thing for over 15 years, and I haven't seen any indication. And they can say all they want that the county isn't cooperative. Well, the county's been waiting for these people to come to the table so we could do something. And we've had that interest for a long time. And it hasn't, I mean, I think it'd be great. The Postal Service even looked at creating a postal hub there. I think we did have some kind of unofficial communications about 8, 10 years ago about them possibly taking advantage of it. But, you know, hey, they're broke now, so they're not probably going to do anything. Except go out of business someday.
All that being said, Jim, it just makes it more urgent that we privatize it.
Yeah.
Let a private.
But I think when we do the
RFP
RFP and we privatize it, okay, I think we need to let them know that, you know, they're buying a pig in a poke unless they can somehow convince the Army. Now, if FedEx has approached the Army, they haven't approached us directly, officially, but they've approached the Army, you know, negotiating something, that maybe is the way it's going to be done. Maybe they can cut a deal, because for one thing, out Sierra Army Depot, I was surprised to learn when we were on that tour here not too long ago, a year or two ago, that Sierra Army Depot is the biggest FedEx customer in the country. Sierra Army Depot. They generate more single bit, as a point of source of business, they do more than any other customer FedEx has, so maybe that's the breakthrough right there. That sounds like a good winner to me.
I say we give it our best and we make it happen.
I've drafted a request for proposals that need some fine tuning that could be released in the next month or so. Frankly, I find it a little hard to believe that if somebody was truly interested in that property like FedEx or UPS, that they would not have contacted the county. I mean, every map that anyone would look at would show who owns that property.
Yeah, but they also know the agreements with the federal government.
There's-
They gotta
there's-
get through the big gorilla in the closet first and
Yeah,
foremost.
that's the, that's the controlling point. We don't have control of that land. We may have a deed that isn't worth the paper it's printed on because the use of that property is totally shut down. And now, this other quitclaim thing, you know, what are we gonna be doing with, in digging down under, a foot down into the ground? It's gonna affect that property too, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Well, if you'd like, I would be happy to further the draft and bring it